A beautiful first day of October for anything except visiting museums or parks that are operated by the National Park Service.
Frankly, we're very disappointed that we can't visit the Constitution. I think it indicates a severe lack of leadership in Washington, both in the Congress, the Senate, and the White House.
Those most impacted by this partial government shutdown are the tourists. Guides along the Freedom Trail, they're off duty today. The JFK Museum and Library, operated by a foundation, closed because it houses some national archives.
We looked on the internet and didn't see anything about it being closed, and we figured that there would be a notification.
Disappointed?
Yeah.
Well, we felt it was a very important part. This is one of the major attractions in Boston, and unfortunately it's closed, and we hear the government has closed down.
These sort of closures seriously impact our holiday and what we're trying to do.
The Bunker Hill Monument, closed. Outside Boston, the impact is also felt. The Cape Cod National Seashore is closed. Maine's Acadia National Park is closed. In fact, campers at all federal parks are asked to leave within 48 hours. The Veterans Hospitals remain open. The Moakley Federal Courthouse will stay open for at least 2 weeks. Meantime, nonprofit and university programs receiving federal funds remain open as long as they can operate. Researchers at some colleges and universities are worried about funding from the National Institutes of Health. It's only day one, yet no one has a clue how long this will last.
Our government can't get it together and compromise somehow. You know, Benjamin Franklin once said, supposedly, that to cut a piece of wood, sometimes you got to take a little off of both ends.
What's wrong with the government? You know, somebody needs to get to work.
In Boston, Gail Huff, WGBH News.
Well, my first guest is able to join us today because she's one of the 800,000 federal employees who have been furloughed. CAROLYN FEDEROFF is an attorney for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So, CAROLYN, did you get advance warning, or were you called in today and then given the lay of the land, or they let you know yesterday?
We were given advance notice. However, we were also ordered to come into work today to officially receive our furlough notice, to put messages on our answering machines and on our computers, close out any last moment work, and then leave until further notice.
Were you told to leave all of your work implements there, your Blackberries, all that, because they actually don't want you doing any work to kind of make a point?
No, actually, it's illegal for us to do any work. If you are furloughed, we would be subject to disciplinary action if we were to do any work.
So you were also part of the government shutdown 17 years ago. What's the difference between then and now?
This time, people are feeling much more resigned to a long shutdown. That this is the 6th or 7th time in the past 4 years where we have been threatened with a shutdown. In my agency, we have had 5 furlough days over this past summer. We're feeling pretty beaten down, whereas in '95, people had a lot more fight to them. I remember that we did a lockout picket almost every day of that furlough because we were making it clear we were ready to work. And I know that people are ready to work now, but we're just exhausted.
I want to bring Tom O'Neill from O'Neill & Associates into the conversation. Tom, I was reading Tip in the Gipper today because I'm interviewing Chris Matthews on Thursday, and I just thought, coincidentally, we had booked you even before I started reading the book, but whether the same kinds of things would have been happening back then in the mid-'80s when they came together and there was a much more congenial effort to work together. This is totally politically driven. Would it have happened the same way?
I think not, because I think what you're finding today is that both parties are really cut in their own cement. And they're finding it very difficult to work with one another. But we have one other very odd feature here. You talked, Emily, about the close down in 1994, 17 years ago. That was led by revolutionaries, namely a man by the name of Boehner, who forced that to happen, and consequently it was the end of Newt Gingrich in 1996, and in 1997 his resignation. That wouldn't have taken place 10 years earlier. It's taking place today because the revolutionaries in 1994 are the moderates in today's Republican Party in Congress. And they're saddled with 20% of the so-called Tea Partiers who just won't let go. They don't have any belief that the federal government should exist in its existing form. They don't believe in the ACA, Obamacare, as it's come to be called. They're holding the budget of the United States hostage in order to rescind that after it's been passed by the U.S. Congress, signed into law by the President, ratified by the U.S. Supreme Court, and they still want to go back. It just can't happen. It's a travesty, frankly.
Tom, President Obama had some of his toughest words, actually, that I've ever heard in his entire, 2 terms, about the Republicans and their reasons, their political motivations for trying to drive a stake through the Affordable Care Act. And he was very insistent that that's not going to happen. Was he a little bit late on this? Could he have had this, would it have made any difference if he had had that message out earlier?
I don't know the answer to the question. I can tell you this, that during the debate of the last presidential campaign, he didn't talk about it so much as Mitt Romney did. I'll remind you, Mitt Romney ran the campaign around day one. There was something called the day one ad, which said, and on day one, I'm going to sign a piece of paper that's going to rescind Obamacare. Well, the fact of the matter is, President Obama won with hundreds of thousands of more votes, Democratic votes, than Mitt Romney had. But the fact of the matter is, Mitt Romney carried 17 more congressional districts. And so you've got these kind of districts which are locked in this Tea Party cement, as I said, kind of wrangling against a very popular president elected by the people, trying to rescind the law and hold hostage, this budget. It's crazy.
Do federal workers take this personally? Because I don't think there's any animus towards anybody who works. I think the regular person feels your pain, if you want to know the truth. It's like you have jobs, and I got a wonderful email from somebody today at the JFK Library saying they have never been busier in their lives. It's the 50th anniversary coming up. They're running like crazy. They're fulfilling demands from researchers and school students, everybody all over the country, and in a race to meet this, anniversary in November, and suddenly they're shut down.
I think that federal employees are feeling, they do feel as though they have a target on their back. And frankly, they also feel that in the last few budget battles that the president has offered our pensions, our pay, our benefits in exchange for passage of budgets. We've contributed approximately $130 billion towards deficit reduction over the next 10 years. And although the average person may say that they like their Social Security clerk, or they like the person who delivers the mail every day, they still don't like government, and yet they use our services all the time. I think that we have allowed the debate to skew far off center. That when you look at the politics of the 90s, that what is considered conservative by those standards now would be smack dab in the center.
That's exactly what, and as you pointed out, John Boehner has made it his own, because he's trying to be reasonable to a degree.
Well, he's trying to hold on to both facets of the party within his own Congress. The extreme right and that moderate group that he has serving as Republican members of the U.S. Congress, but he can't control the two.
Do you agree with Carolyn, Tom, that this is going to be a long haul? I don't know why. My gut says it won't be that long.
My sense is that I would have expected more activity in Congress today on the Hill, and nothing really transpired. They're giving high fives to one another on the Republican side because they've brought government to its knees. It's not only the individual public servant who's out of work and deemed to be non-essential. It is, as you go forward, 800,000 people, which is, by the way, 0.5% of the workforce. So if it lasts a couple of weeks, not only does it kick up unemployment rates nationally and have that ripple effect throughout the entire economy, but costs $55 billion to the federal government, who think today they're saving money when in effect they're not.
Of course, because last time they ended up giving you retroactive pay. Is it true that you would qualify for unemployment after a certain amount, even as an employee?
It's a matter of state law, and so in this state we have to be out for a week, and then after a week we would be eligible. But in many states it's 6 weeks or 4 weeks.
Yeah, but with this Congress, the question had to do with retroactive pay. I hope they have unemployment comp, because I can't imagine this Congress with that Tea Party giving retroactive anything.
They did do it last time. All right, Tom O'Neill, thanks so much for coming.
Always nice. Thanks, Sam.
Great story. Appreciate you coming.